hiring solution. Hire candidates all in the same place. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Humidity will join the smoke in creating adverse conditions for some. The air quality warning for our area runs through noon. That's for the smoke from Canada. Milwaukee's new sales tax has led to the suspension of plans for a new 25-story apartment building on the east side. The Madison-based developer cited the tax's impact on increased cost and the rising interest rates, making borrowing for the project more expensive. A local developer is experiencing rapid growth in its co-working office ventures within Waukesha County, preparing to launch 3 new locations soon. Among them, the former Boston Store Furniture Gallery building in Brookfield is undergoing a transformation into a co-working space with about 300 workstations, along with meeting rooms and event facilities. For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup. Yes! Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger. Gilbert Brown, Earl Ingram, 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. And News, City Media Network News. At 12:15, Sound Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alma Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn, The Rex. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Tom Cruise. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
People won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally, commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed in counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medication. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, could potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
The Supreme Court threw out affirmative action. In a lengthy dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor spoke at length from the bench, in so holding the court cements a superficial rule of colorblindness in an endemically segregated society where race continues to matter.
Not anymore,
We're good. You talk about how racism has impacted you in your life and other spots of the admissions.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on your local civic media radio station and on the app.
It's our conversation on air, join the discussion on our social media channels. Find Civic Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find social media for
Who's the most fun to drink with of the Republican lawmakers? Todd also confirmed that Robin Voss has virtually no sense of humor.
You can always let us know if you're drinking with lawmakers at 844-967-2789.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristin Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
yada, yada, yada.
Wisconsin! How do you plan to stay cool? Both in the short term, as in like the next 10 days, but also in the long term. I'm interested in anything you've read about or are already investigating as far as long-term technology that is being explored of how the hell we're going to keep ourselves cool in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, because I am bullish on humans' capacity to come up with new technology. I am less bullish on our human capacity and political will to do anything to curb how hot the world is getting. And so there's one that I feel like is probably inevitable, and our ability to come up with ways to live with it is much more likely than our ability to actually keep it from happening. 844-967-2789. How do you stay cool currently, knowing that it's going to be very hot these next 10 days. But also, is there anything out there that you've read about that you think is interesting technology and interesting advancement that will keep us not even cool, but just not dying from heat
That would be nice.
in the future? 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. Jane McNair, what do you do to stay cool?
I stay in the house,
Okay.
which is, I mean, we're fortunate. We have air conditioning. When I think of people who live in apartment buildings that have no air,
Or old houses
or
that have
old houses that have, they don't have the ductwork for it and all that stuff, with a little room air conditioner, I don't know how they do it. The one trick I heard about, and I've never tried this myself, but if you have a little fan or a box fan, and you take a couple of bottles of water and you freeze them, and then you can like zip tie them to the front of the fan,
Okay.
that's something.
Something.
But I mean, we all know how hot it's been in Arizona, right?
Well, I mean,
It's insane.
it's interesting because I feel like every day it's in the news of how hot it is. Like in my roundup of, Washington Post, like seven top stories, Morning Brew, 1440, like all of my like crowdsourced, like here are the things you need to know today that I read every morning and prep for the show.
Right.
For the last 2-3 weeks, every morning there's at least one story about the heat.
Well, I grabbed something from the CBS Morning Show from today talking about the conditions currently in Tempe, Arizona.
Even quick contact with the ground here, which can hit 180 degrees, may cause first-degree burns. And at the Arizona Burn Center, officials say more than a third of the beds are occupied by patients with surface contact burns.
Think about that.
From the sidewalk?
Yeah. 180-degree sidewalks. Yeah. So I guess if you trip and you fall, you're going to get a first-degree burn.
I mean, how are people getting in and out of their cars? Because think about like a hot car on a hot day if you forget to park in the shade and, the way it feels on the back of your legs because you're obviously wearing shorts because it's hot.
I can't even imagine. I really can't. And I have a brother. One of my brothers and his family is in Phoenix, outside of Phoenix. And I want to say in January we were on the phone and he was talking about how lovely it was because he was in the backyard sitting by the pool. And I said, "Well, that's all well and good, dear. Let's talk in August and see how you're feeling then." And I don't think that they expected that it was going to be this hot for this long.
I mean, this was was this yesterday? This was as of July 19th. Heat has killed at least 18 people in Arizona's Maricopa County so far this year. There's 69 more deaths that are under investigation. And the county is one of the few that has revamped its reporting to ensure heat deaths are accounted for. So that's just the fact that they're reporting it compared to other places that aren't reporting them as heat deaths. But, over 250 million people are set to experience heat indexes over 90 degrees in the coming days.
That's most of the country.
And this number, I don't know if this is the world or this is the country, but let me see if I can make that. Oh yeah, this is the country. So this is even talking about Europe and other places that are also dealing with this. But this week will be the summer's hottest so far over the lower 48 states. By Wednesday and Thursday, all but the Pacific Northwest will see above average temperatures, and that includes Wisconsin. So so far, Wisconsin's actually been, our summer's actually been like a degree, like less than usual.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So while much of the southern United States has been suffering through a record heat wave, temperatures in Wisconsin have been below average this month despite a statewide drought. But those mild temperatures in the state may be coming to an end as the hottest conditions of the summer are expected to move in this week. So once again, I ask you, knowing that it's going to get really hot, how do you plan to stay cool? 844-967-2789. I guess for some people, it's just, for when you're lucky enough to live in a place that has air conditioning.
But
that's the answer.
Think about all the people who work outside.
Yes.
Postmen and roofers and landscapers and
postmen, you said.
And delivery drivers.
And this is why the part of the UPS strike is so insane, that the fact that they have for so long have had trucks that don't have air conditioning in them
at all.
And so that, but then, it's what they always say, right? Check on elderly, like the people in your life who are older, kids, making sure that they are staying cool. And so that being the most vulnerable to this kind of heat, staying hydrated. Don't drink your face off outside. But I'm also interested in just this, this also could be the coolest summer we have ever for future.
That's terrifying.
Isn't that terrifying?
Yes.
And it's interesting. What is interesting though is so far the power grids in a lot of these places have been okay.
That's amazing.
And that's so the California, so PG&E, which is the California Utility Company, and they would be able to meet heightened demand for electricity this summer, while the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, which is known for being not that reliable,
no,
hasn't asked residents to conserve electricity since last month, even as power demand hit a new record last week. And so it's, why is this potentially happening? There's several reasons why power grids are holding up during the heat waves of this summer. California's record snowpack in the winter has given a major boost to hydropower.
Oh.
In May, hydropower produced more electricity than any month in the previous 3 years per California's grid operator. So, one, renewable energy. Another reason, in renewable energy powerhouse Texas, solar capacity is more than twice the amount installed at the same point last year.
Oh, wow.
And recently expanded battery storage in both states can be tapped as an emergency lifeline when the power grid is strained. So,
because Texas is kind of an island unto itself.
Well, they have their own power grid
when it comes to power.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they unlike other states, they manage and maintain their own power grid.
They don't share.
No, and so, but also it's the same story in Europe so far. As Europe's electricity systems are coping with the heat, which is a good thing, obviously. But it's also part of that is because it's not traditional electricity that it is being reliant. It is being able to hydropower, solar power, and being able to rely on different things. So it goes back to my original question of, the rudimentary layperson right now of eat popsicles. That's my go-to. How do you stay cool? But I'm really interested in what people are hearing as far as bigger plans of how we're going to manage this. Because again, this is not going away.
Well, and then we have to take into consideration the water temperature, because I believe the water temperature right now off the coast of Florida is 93 degrees.
Is it still?
Yeah. And so we're going to have mass bleaching of corals.
Yeah.
Which is a critical life system within our seas and our oceans. Are we all going to be walking around in refrigerated suits?
Well, and that's the thing, because it's one thing, the ability for most of us to say our answer is, oh, we'll just stay inside. And not everyone has that luxury.
Exactly.
There's a homeless population. Like you said, there's people who make a living by working outside. There's people who live in places where air conditioning isn't an option, and you have fans and maybe, individual units. But I just think it's interesting as far as what people are working on to try to make this a habitable place in the future. And so either way, if you have any heat hacks, you'd like to share with people for how to get through the next 10 days when it's going to get super hot, we would love to hear from you. But also, if there's any interesting technology that you've read about that you think is interesting, I have some that I'm going to get to on the other side of the break, as far as maybe going underground, maybe making everything look like Santorini, which wouldn't be a bad thing.
Oh, Santorini, beautiful.
And white concrete. I don't know.
Try and reflect the light.
Yeah, exactly. 844-967-2789. We will take your texts and your calls on the other side of the break. How do you beat the heat for both today and tomorrow. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
The heat is on. The heat is on. The heat is on. It's on the street. The heat is on. The heat is on. The heat is on. It's on the street. The heat is on. The heat is on.
If you care about animals or crops, you probably care how the weather could impact both.
It's summer in Wisconsin, and the success of your efforts often depends on knowing the forecast. Count on your local Civic Media weather team for all the information you need.
Crops roots are also growing deeper in search for water, which is bad news because when rain finally falls, it will sit shallow and be absorbed by the layers of the soil.
Your weather and more for your part of Wisconsin.
On your local Civic Media radio station and streaming on the app.
This summer, 540 AM WAUK has a new lineup. Yes, that's awesome. Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Great Digger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alma Show. 3 to 4, Max and the Rex. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 540 AM WAUK.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
I would be remiss if I didn't say some of what we do always is political. It has policy impacts. It has political impacts. But if you're raised on DEPTRA and your organizing principle is that my guy wins and your guy loses, the entire country suffers. That is not our call to serve. That is not what we raise our hand and say an oath.
The Maggie Dawn Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. High temperatures reach up to 89 this afternoon. Mainly clear skies. Winds out of the southwest, 8 to 15 miles an hour. Lows dip down to about 69 tonight. Scattered thunderstorms likely tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 86. Low 90s Thursday. Upper 80s Friday with a chance for scattered storms. For Civic Media.
I am Kristin Bright. He is Jane Madnair. And we are asking you, how do you beat the heat? Because the heat is certainly coming to Wisconsin in the next 10 days. Likely will be worse depending on where you live. But not only is it going to be hot, it is also going to be humid. And this is after it's been hot, like deathly hot, no exaggeration, in other parts of the country, California, Arizona, Texas, where people have died and some people are getting surface burns from the sidewalk. And I'm interested in talking, life hacks of how you stay cool today, but also if you've heard anything of what technology is coming down the pipe to keep us cool in the future, if this is likely what every summer is going to look like for not only our country, but around the world. 844-967-2789 with the phones. Stay from Mequon. How do you stay cool?
I love going to Oak Lake.
Okay.
It's just an hour. Yeah, it's an hour north of where I live, and it's a spring fed. It's not a huge lake, but it's fantastic. It's probably some of the nicest water in the southeast part of the state. I'd say that in Lake Geneva. So that's where I'm going to be.
All right.
Definitely take the boat in there and enjoy the water. And it's a beautiful place. I highly recommend it. People know it for Road America, but the lake is totally it's kind of like the gem of that community. To be honest with you.
Are there less bibs there than Lake Geneva?
I'm sorry.
Is there less Illinois people there than Lake Geneva? Is it more of a secret? Is it more of a secret than Lake Geneva is?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Sold.
There's a lot of Illinois people, but it's not big. I mean, Elkhart Lake is only got, I think, like just a shade under 1,000 residents.
Okay.
And there's 3 major hotels, or resorts, I should say, on the lake, and they're great. One of them is called the Ostap, one is called Sea Pins, and I forgot the other one. It changed names recently, and it's really great. And the other place that I used to go to, but it's a little further drive, is Green Lake, and Green Lake is up by Ripon, and it's the deepest lake in the state. It's ginormous. I mean, it's unbelievable.
All right.
But it's also, it's just one of those things. I mean, we have a lot of, places to go to if you want to cool off in your local lake.
I mean, Lake Michigan's probably still pretty cool too.
Well,
if you really need to cool off, you can jump in there. Thanks for the call, Dave. So I wanted to get off before we move on to the next segment because it is Tuesday. So we're going to recombobulate with Dan Shafer after this next break. But some things that I've read that, because NASA is not working on a space fan, at least that we know of.
Space fan.
But there are other scientists who are picking up their slack in trying to cool buildings down. So one is going underground. Geothermal heat pumps can cool and heat, because it will get cold again someday, your home by sending water through buried pipes to take advantage of the stable temperature of the ground beneath your backyard. So it's got some big advantages over traditional air conditioning and heating because it uses far less electricity and it's much cheaper in the long run. It is typically more expensive up front, but a 30% tax credit from the Inflation Reduction Act could change that.
Oh, wow.
So this is something that's already here.
So we're all going to be living in the Shire, essentially.
Well, I don't think if you're building your house underground, but it's like the heat pumps and that stuff is
I
underground.
kind of like the idea of living in the Shire, but anyway.
So then the other option potentially is the whitest paint in the world. We're talking paint so white it could share a sandwich with its dog. Because white people share their food with dogs all the time. And I am totally guilty of that. So is Mike. A team of scientists at Purdue University created a white paint that reflects 98% of sunlight. Most white paints only reflect 80 to 90%.
Oh, wow.
It won't be ready for commercial use for at least another year, but it promises to decrease the need for air conditioning inside a building by about 40%.
That's great.
And so that's what I mean. We could look like Santorini is beautiful. I could live in a place where every building is white.
It's gorgeous.
And then I found, I don't think we have time to go through them, but I did find an article that there's 10 different Israeli companies that are working on innovation for how to cool down buildings. And I think it's interesting of like the aspect of cooling down individuals versus cooling down buildings, but also like ultimately like what do we do for the outside? Because it still doesn't help how much people have to be outside, or the people who have to be outside, how do they survive the heat? And so
I want to give a quick shout out to Judy from East Troy. Hi, girls. We have no air. We have ceiling fans in all the rooms, windows open early, closed when the sun comes around the house, drapes and shades closed, nice and dark and cool. Been doing this for 37 years. Props to you, Judy.
There you go. See? Everyone's got their way.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News Brief. Both UPS and union delivery drivers return to the bargaining table today to try to avert a strike next Tuesday. And it's not just your packages from UPS that would be affected. Noam Schreiber, labors for the New York Times.
Amazon has its own, big delivery network, but they still rely on UPS to do, 10, 20% of it. So things could quickly snarl there.
Holding up a deal, salary hikes. Never mind higher interest rates, Americans are feeling good about the economy. Consumer confidence shot up to the highest level in 2 years this month as inflationary pressures eased. The suffocating heat making the U.S. and parts of the world. An international group of scientists blames humans for burning fossil fuels. Lead author Mariam Zachariah.
All you need to do is look at the facts. There is no other way to explain the signals other than with including the greenhouse gas emissions that we've been putting into the atmosphere.
CBS News Brief. I'm Deborah Rodriguez.
Your hometown radio. Refresh. Keeping you informed, entertained, and connected on the SIP Media Network. SIPmedia.us.
For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Harassing messages and potential intoxication are what led to a standoff in Dillon Sunday. Police say a welfare check for Aaron Wigman was called in as he was staying at the Super 8 motel. When officers arrived, they say Wigman made threatening comments about having a gun, leading to an evacuation and SWAT involvement. After hours of negotiation and with the assistance of Wigman's mother, he surrendered without incident and was evaluated by Walworth County Health Services. The Milwaukee company that created the literal cheesehead has been bought out by the Packers.
The football team says they've acquired Formation Inc., the company behind the original cheesehead hat. The cheesehead has become a well-known symbol for Wisconsinites and Packers fans, and the team explains that they saw an opportunity to grow the brand. Pete Schwaba, Civic Media News.
For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
Living happily ever after isn't always a reality. If you're over 50 and are considering divorce, attorney Andrea Gage with the Everson Law Firm can provide the guidance you need. Andrea focuses on silver divorces, the kind that get more complicated over time and present unique challenges. A family, multiple properties, significant assets. Andrea and the team at Everson Law have the experience to protect your interests. Call Everson Law to set up an appointment with Andrea today. It's never too late to be happy. Everson Law, 920-435-3734.
This Sunday is the Black-owned Summer Marketplace downtown in Deer District from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Enjoy food trucks, vendors, and a live DJ, all while supporting local Black-owned businesses. Learn more at mkeblack.org and download our app today.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Professor Schwaber, what grade would you give the Supreme Court for their interpretation of the law?
That doesn't really work. The grade ordinarily would be how accurately and thoughtfully and carefully have you interpreted, existing precedents. I tell you what, though, if I were teaching a course on, let's say, logic, and I was asked to grade this work in terms of its coherence and its rigor, a high D.
Wow. A high D.
As goes Wisconsin.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristin Bry. She is Jane Madnair. And that music, what is it called? Discombobulating?
It's called Discombobulate.
Discombobulate by Hans Zimmer can only mean that we're recombobulating with Dan Shafer. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoy having my own theme music from Hans Zimmer too. That
I mean, he's the best.
Jane.
He's the GOAT, right?
This is. I'm really excited.
I don't know what the copyright is. If you were to put that on your podcast, if you could get away with it, but I don't know. Test the waters. Try it out.
we'll shoot first and ask questions later, right?
Ask for forgiveness after.
That has been my go-to in most of my content creation life, mostly because I don't make money off of any of my content. So it's like, who's going to sue me? Just, downloading things and being like, well, let's just go with it. All right.
This is a private conversation we're having, right? This isn't on the airwaves. This isn't getting any of us in trouble. Okay, good.
Not admitting guilt whatsoever. Dan Shafer. So I think Town Call after us talked about this yesterday, and I didn't know what they were talking about until I got home and read about it on my own. But it seems like the Republicans, not just the Wisconsin Republicans, but the entire RNC has seen the light. Has seen the light that early voting, not such a bad thing. That maybe they should double down on it. And yesterday, the RNC launched effort to boost Republican early voting in Wisconsin. Thoughts, Dan Shafer?
I was thinking about this. This is like if I came out and came on the show today and said, I'm a Celtics fan now. I'm not a Bucks fan. I'm a Celtics fan. I'm going to reverse course on everything that I have said and done and believed in for years and years and years. It is such a, I think it's just such a hypocritical reversal of the way they have approached voting rights for so long. And now that they realize that these are not illegitimate votes, these are not some sort of fraud, these are not, some nefarious way to swing an election, it's just voting. So I think they realize that they've put themselves at such a disadvantage with early voting, because people like early voting. People like having, not having to rearrange their schedules on election day if it's an inconvenience for them or whatever, and might be able to, get that vote to your local clerk early. And now they're just going to reverse course and pretend like none of this happened. And of course, I also think it's hilarious that they are launching this in Wisconsin, which has been one of the states most aggressively rolling back voting rights. And they are launching it with Ron Johnson, who has been maybe the senator, the single U.S. senator most responsible for the ridiculous attacks on the legitimacy of the 2020 election. Obviously, his role in the fake elector scheme and January 6th and all that. It's just like the hypocrisy is just immense on this one.
And the truth is, sorry, Jane.
How do they craft this message? I want to be on the meetings as they craft this message saying, I know we've been telling you for 10 years that this is dangerous and it's all a lie and everything, but oops, we were wrong. I mean, they're never going to say that.
Yeah,
they'll never admit fault in any of this. They'll never go back and admit like, hey, you remember the last 3 years when we were suggesting that your votes don't count? Remember all that we did with the year-long Gableman investigation? Remember all of the things that we did during the Walker years and during the Voss years to roll back early voting, use, their friends in the conservative legal community to sue at every little juncture that would have expanded voting rights and early voting. No, we're just gonna brush right past that. Yeah, no, that's not happening. We're not gonna move right past that. No.
Well, and it's interesting because now they kind of have to put their money where their mouth is, because simultaneously there's now a new lawsuits for the Dropbox ban and the absentee ballot rules, and they're going to be challenged in a lawsuit ahead of, what are we, 12 days away, 11 days away from the Supreme Court flipping.
We're 7 days away.
Are we only 7 days
it's
away?
A week
it's August
from today.
1st. Yeah, August
1st. Kristin.
Pregnancy brain.
August 1st. It's
blaming.
happening.
We're blaming.
Yeah.
I don't know what day it is.
It's
I just show up on time.
It's the little one's fault.
I saw something, just a quick side note. I saw something as a woman having her, trying to win an argument with her husband when she was pregnant. She goes, I have 2 brains right now, so I'm right. And I was like, I don't know if it works like that. I definitely feel dumber since I've had 2 brains. But I like the argument. But it's interesting. So is it Elias or Elias?
I'm not sure.
So the law group on behalf of 2 liberal-leaning organizations and a Dane County man are basically challenging what came down the RNC is so in favor of getting their people out to vote early, are they going to magically also reverse course on drop boxes, on some of these rules that, you know, the conservative law group, Rick Essenberg and Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, are they going to like about face on this? And even if we don't get an apology, like I will take the reversal of them not fighting these stupid laws that they put in, because there's zero difference between the Dropbox, like putting something in a Dropbox and putting something in the mail. And if we can reverse that, like fine. Like
it's actually
you guys-
more secure to put it in a Dropbox. But
yeah,
yes.
and so it's like, is that where this is going? As far as like, if you guys are really embracing early voting, are you also going to not put up a stink with these lawsuits that are going to come forward?
Or when, you know, when Milwaukee tries to have things like an early voting station at Fiserv Forum or American Family Field, are conservatives going to sue to try to block that type of thing again? You know, all these different, they have used the levers of power in the legal system in so many different ways. And I think we've talked so much about what this shift will mean on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, but I think voting rights is really going to be one of the topics that's going to emerge, especially in the early going here after Protasewicz is sworn in next week. You know, I think voting rights is going to be a big part of that. I think gerrymandering is going to be a big part of that, because there are such obvious cases to be made in so many of these instances too. Like last week, I had a chance to interview Jeff Mandel from Law Forward.
Oh, great. We're going to actually have Nicole Shafer on 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Also from Law Forward.
Yeah. And he was talking about how, you know, we might not see a huge shift immediately in what would happen with the Wisconsin Supreme Court, because these cases have to kind of make their way through.
Yeah.
But with gerrymandering, with voting rights, those are two issues that are expected to come up before the court fairly soon.
Fairly soon. Which is interesting, because even despite the attack on voting rights, despite the conservative court that has voted or ruled against these things with drop boxes and early voting and all of this stuff, statewide elections, Democrats have still done a pretty good job in Wisconsin, despite all of that. And it has been noticed by Politico. I'm assuming you saw this, because this is also your job.
I did.
But
yes.
Last week, Politico had an article that featured specifically Dane County, but college towns kind of across the country, but how basically saying that what Dane County has done has made it almost impossible potentially for Republicans to win statewide here. Is that a fair summary of the article?
It is. And I think it's, you know, it looked at Dane County and a number of these college towns that maybe were even kind of, you know, 50-50 in the past and are trending certain directions. You know, but I think Dane County in particular, between young people voting in greater and greater margins for Democrats, and I think people in suburban communities voting in greater margins for Democrats, I think it has just supercharged the margins in Dane County to such a degree where it is the biggest problem that Republicans are facing in the state. The Dane County turnout machine. It was something I wrote about in breaking down the midterms and breaking down the spring election. You know, it's just such a huge part of what's happening in statewide elections in Wisconsin. And I think Dane County in that article really emerging as the example of a college town shift, of of another, number of demographic factors that are kind of baked into that as well. So I think it's really interesting, and it's making, we've seen it in the last two election cycles. It's making such a big difference. And I think, part of that also is because these are the first kind of normal-ish post-pandemic elections too. And I think you saw a response to what Republicans did during the pandemic and have done, with the levers of power as well in the state of Wisconsin. And there's just a wholesale rejection of that on policy, in addition to just kind of the demographic and organizational factors that are in play there as well.
Our guest is Dan Shafer. He is the founder of the Recombobulation area. But here's my hypothesis If the Republicans embrace early voting and drop boxes, they are going to double down on their efforts to raise the voting age to 25.
Oh, and we're seeing that from some of the candidates running for in a presidential primary field. I think Vivek Ramaswamy has been pushing that in a big way to raise the voting age, and we're going to see that too. They're going to try to limit, voting locations. They're going to try to limit, it's the double-edged sword of what they're saying and doing here, right? I think back to a couple months ago, the Republicans had their conference or their annual conference, and the head of the GOP was saying, hey, we need to embrace early voting, we need to embrace blah blah blah. And then I think at the same time that they passed a resolution at that conference or something like that to say, hey, can we get rid of, I'm exaggerating, but hey, can we get rid of polling places at college campuses or whatever it might be? It's just, I think this is one thing that the party leaders in the base in the party don't seem to be aligned on.
Well, it doesn't seem, that coming out of that convention, granted, we were not invited, so we were not there.
We were rejected.
Now famously not invited.
Yes. All of our, all of our conclusions of what happened there is secondhand from what other people reported. But in general, it doesn't feel like there is a lot of consensus on anything. I don't feel like there's consensus on a candidate for president. There's certainly, we have no candidate to run against Tammy Baldwin right now. And this real internal struggle that they have as far as are we MAGA? Or are we trying to appeal to the suburban voters that we're losing? Are we fiscal conservatives and are we talking about kitchen table, economic stuff? Or are we talking about transgender sports and bathrooms and teaching that slavery was good? And I think there's they don't know. It doesn't seem like they know.
We have a text I wanted to share with you from the 541. The GOP will use these lawsuits as their basis for the change of course. The courts say we have to, so we are going to embrace the decisions made by the courts.
So how do they embrace and encourage early voting, but only to their people? How do you have that selective, you guys should vote early, but not them? And how do you make rules and laws that facilitate that? What does that mean? Do you have an idea of what that could even look like?
I think, if I could try to, examine the calculus of what they're thinking here, I think there used to be the theory that high turnout automatically meant Democratic victory.
Which has been proven not to necessarily be the case.
And it has been trending in the other direction lately, because I think you have people in the suburbs that have been trending Democratic are more reliable voters, people who will vote in every election, not just a presidential or not just a gubernatorial, but will vote and up and down the ballot and primaries and blah, 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 and all of that. And I think the kind of more white working class voters that the Trump campaign really tapped into in 2016, who knows if they're still there in 2024, people are less reliable in going to vote in every election. They might vote in presidential elections with Trump on the ticket. But I think that has kind of changed the calculus and say, okay, higher turnout automatically means Democratic victory. Now things have changed there.
Changed a little bit.
That's a factor as well.
All right, when we come back, Dan Shafer will still be here, and we're going to recombobulate not necessarily about anything in Wisconsin, but about X, the letter X, and how it makes you feel. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Attention, Wisconsin veterans. Hello, I'm Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin. If you are a veteran struggling to pay for rent, utilities, or other life-sustaining services, I want you to know that the Veterans Rental Assistance Program is here to help. You have already made a most noble sacrifice. You shouldn't have to continue doing so. We are here to support you. The Veterans Rental Assistance Program was created by and for people living in Wisconsin, with benefit approvals being issued to veterans in just days, not months. It's never easy to ask for assistance, but rest assured, we're here to help. You've always been there for us. We want you to know that we're here for you. Call 833-WIS-VRAP. That's 833-947-8727, or visit vrapwi.com. On behalf of the state of Wisconsin, thank you.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Mainly clear this afternoon with a high of 89. Winds out of the southwest, 8 to 15 miles an hour. Lows level off around 69 tonight. Partly cloudy skies. Scattered thunderstorms likely tomorrow, 86. Mainly cloudy skies. Mainly clear Thursday with highs in the low 90s. Chance for scattered thunderstorms Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 81
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristin Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and it is Tuesday, so we are recombobulating with Mr. Dan Shafer, founder of the Recombobulation Area, and a prolific tweeter, I would say. I think one of my best jokes was when I hosted your 2-year anniversary of the Recombobulation Area and interviewed you, and then we also played the championship game when Bucks won, summer 2021. And my closing question to you was, who watches your daughters while you're tweeting? But to be fair, how you've grown Recombobulation Area, I think you can probably attribute a lot to Twitter and the community that you've built there. And so what I think of how it's getting upended by Elon, that can't feel good. And this week is probably the most upending news of what it's not even called Twitter anymore.
It's called X. It's just it seems like every couple of weeks there's some news with Twitter that makes it seems like, oh, this might be done. We might be done here. But then again, it's like, but then things will calm down and people will get used to whatever stupid thing that Elon has passed down. And I think the tweet I always reference when thinking about this, Brooke Frizzell, who is another prolific tweeter in Milwaukee, said something along the lines of, she said, leaving Twitter just because it's fallen into disrepair under terrible leadership. I live in a state run by the Wisconsin state legislature. So it's like, well, I'm not leaving because much like living in a state run by the Wisconsin state legislature, it's our problem and we're going to all fix it together.
And it's interesting that you say that because it's like you've put it's the sweat equity into a community that you've built there and stuff. I have found myself disengaging on there almost entirely just because I don't have the energy to fight with people right now. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's because it's like they just have too many other things going on. And so it's become toxic enough where I'm like, oh, if I put this out there, am I going to get something from one of these conservative trolls? And then I'm going to have to go through the mental gymnastics. Like, do I want to respond to this? Do I disengage? And then I'll think about it and I'll probably come up with something really witty, but then I'll talk myself out of it because it's like, oh, I don't want to be mean. And I don't have time. I don't have time to do that argument in my own head, let alone then actually just engage and go down that rabbit hole. And so I found myself totally not wanting to be there, which is frustrating because it is a community, but it's it sounds like he's trying to make this into the app to end all apps. Have you read about what he wants X to be?
Yeah, I think it's just he'll say these things, right? He'll just say things in these interviews and try to explain what's happening. And I think ultimately, if you step back and take a big picture look at what he's doing, there was a really good piece on this by a guy named Casey Newton, who writes a Substack called Platformer. It's a really good one on tech community, and it's just he talked about that. It's not just one little thing of changing it to X and having these goofy, dumb 420-69 jokes that he does all the time. It's just he's trying to neuter a platform that has been an effective organizing tool and messaging tool for the left. And I think, it's a platform that has, of course, been used by all corners of the political spectrum, but I think it's a platform that's been used most effectively by those on the left. And I think that is ultimately what he's trying to do. He's trying to ruin something that has been, a tool to speaking truth to power and organizing on the left. And, I think there was an instance where he was just like posting a video joking about the Black Lives Matter t-shirts he found in the background or in some locker at Twitter headquarters and stuff like that. I think that is ultimately the goal of this is to break something. And whatever he says he's going to build, he'll say something and then go back on it a week later and then say it's part of a larger plan to do this and that. It's not. It's just breaking something. He's just breaking something.
Because what he's saying is basically X is like a universe that pulls together 24 years of his ideas and wildest fantasies. This is from Axios. In Musk's random tellings, it will be Twitter plus Substack plus YouTube plus PayPal plus Amazon plus TikTok plus WeChat plus Baidu. I don't know what that one is. All rolled into one universe marked by the letter X. And
I'm sorry, when I hear that, I hear it in Kendall Roy from Succession's voice, where it's just like, we're going to be this, and this, and it's going to change the game. And yet, it sounds so pathetic. Like, these tech leaders have just been so pathetic on so many of these things.
But it's interesting because ultimately he's still $44 billion in the hole on this, right? And so one of the my brother sent me this one from Data Drive MD. I don't know who this person is, but this is an interesting theory. I'm just going to float it out there. The Twitter rebrand reeks of legal maneuvering meant to keep the company's most valuable asset, its brand, out of the fray. Rebranding affords Elon the ability to transfer Twitter brand assets to a shell company before X files for bankruptcy. This maneuver safeguards the brand from creditors and protects his ability to sell the brand without requiring the court's permission or reuse the brand if when X emerges from bankruptcy. This was him quote tweeting, "By my calculations, we're 4 to 6 weeks away from X filing for bankruptcy and about 6 to 9 months from X emerging from bankruptcy and rebranding itself as Twitter." So, is this a way for him to not be $44 billion in the hole?
Yeah, well, it's just a way that, another example in this country of even when billionaires fail, they still happen to make money and they still don't pay taxes and they still somehow fail upwards over and over and over again.
And that'll be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, in the 2 minutes that we have left, you got anything coming up? Any plugs or something? Any events, podcasts? Just generally subscribe to the
starting to slow down a little bit, but as we begin to start to turn our attention towards 2024, towards the political news cycle that will soon envelop Wisconsin, I would recommend that you get that subscription to the Recombobulation area now so that you can be on board for all that we have planned for covering elections in this crazy state for the next 18 months. And now we are just less than a month away from the first debate in Milwaukee. I've been writing a little bit about DeSantis and Trump, talked a little bit about that on WTMJ Nights last week. So
nice.
That's all out there. Come check it out. Subscribe to the Recombobulation area.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Dan Shafer, we will see you back next week when the Supreme Court will be flipping because apparently it's in 7 days. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a break for the top of the hour news. And when we come back, Renee Eastman from Leading Age Wisconsin is going to be here to talk about our crisis in our senior living centers across Wisconsin. Stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Bless my soul, beyond the birds and the
Summer 540 AM WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 540 AM WAUK.
Join the conversation with your favorite hosts or shows anytime. Follow Civic Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Share your thoughts on our social media channels wherever you are, whenever you want. The Civic Media Network of local radio stations here for you.
You're listening to The Shaw, WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266DR Waukesha, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Steve Kathan. The oppressive heat dome is spreading into new territory, as we hear from CBS's Cammie McCormick.
From Katy, Texas, where they're trying to conserve water with this heat.
We're lacking water, and it's very, very hot.
To South Carolina, where Debbie Winsell has shut down her food truck.
I keep a thermometer there, and sometimes it's 119 degrees.
A new study claims it's about climate change and fossil fuels. Mark Hertzgaard of Climate Now.
It's not really rocket science. If you're going to overheat the planet, you're going to get hotter temperatures.
This study finds these deadly hot spells in the U.S. and Southern Europe could not have occurred without it.
Forecasters say Phoenix will top 110 today for the 26th day in a row. Overseas, it's been scorching hot in Southern Europe, and in Greece, wildfires have sent tourists fleeing. CBS's Elaine Cobb says there's been a tragic twist in the firefighting effort.
Locals and tourists watched in horror as a firefighting plane disappeared into a canyon before bursting into flames. This on the island of Evia, one of several Greek islands where wildfires are raging. A new heat wave today has sent temperatures soaring above 100 degrees and sent tourists and residents scrambling to leave.
Correspondent Ramy Inocencio is in Ukraine reporting on a new wave of Russian attacks.
Sirens blared over the capital city for more than 3 hours. This morning, though, thankfully, we did get confirmation that there were no injuries or casualties or damages to any buildings. Also, that all drones, an unknown number of them, but believed to be Iranian-made, were shot down.
His campaign says Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was involved in a car accident while traveling today to Tennessee political events. He was not hurt. President Biden signs a proclamation today designating 3 spots in Illinois and Mississippi to honor Emmett Till and his mother. Till was the black teen tortured and killed in 1955. Brent Leggs, among those who lobbied for it, says he hopes it calls attention to similar sites that need preservation.
It isn't for our nation to remain stuck in a painful past. It really is to challenge our nation to say that we can do better.
A new round of labor talks today between UPS and the Teamsters Union, with a possible strike looming early next week if there's no deal. But supply chain expert Jason Miller at Michigan State University says it makes sense for the company to avert that.
UPS has a tremendous amount to lose right now. There's been some projections that if there were a prolonged strike, UPS could lose about 30% of its volume diverted to other players. And I do not believe that is a risk UPS's management wants to take.
Right now on Wall Street, the Dow is ahead 12 points. The S&P is up 5. This is CBS News.
Need to hire quality candidates fast? You need Indeed, the end-to-end hiring solution. Attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Visit Indeed.com/credit. Looking for more local programming? Check out our website, civicmedia.us, to see our entire lineup.
For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Following the arrest of 22-year-old teacher Rachel Goodall for second-degree sexual assault of a child, the family of the 9th grader involved is calling for an investigation into the school board and superintendent in Oak Creek. Prosecutors in Milwaukee say Goodall had an inappropriate relationship with the student and at one point had sex with that student in a classroom. This is the second such incident involving an Oak Creek teacher. Racist threats and vandalism is leading to a couple of years in prison for a West Allis man. The U.S. Attorney's Office and the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division worked together on the case against 45-year-old William McDonald. McDonald vandalized vehicles and property, left threatening notes filled with racial slurs, and demanded that the victims leave a neighborhood. For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
Does your financial strategy include your hopes and dreams? What matters most to you? For over 100 years, ThriveFund has helped clients like you find financial solutions for life's important goals. Explore a full range of options, from financial advice and investments to insurance, banking, and generosity programs. To have a heart-to-heart about your finances, contact Mandy Roberts, who you may recognize as Mandy Wright. Call her at 715-470-1303. 715-470-1303. Mandy Roberts proudly serves the central Wisconsin area. For more details, visit thrivefund.com/disclosure.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
This Sunday is the Black-owned Summer Marketplace downtown in Deer District from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Enjoy food trucks, vendors, and a live DJ, all while supporting local Black-owned businesses. Learn more at mkeblack.org and download our app today.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alt.
That's what we like to do on this show. Find the comedy gold.
I just like non-fungible as a word.
It is a good word.
It's a wonderful, it just has a good mouthfeel.
La-di-da, la-di-da, la-la.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristin Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the 11 o'clock hour of As Goes Wisconsin. I am your host, Kristin Bry, along with Jane Madnair on the board. And it was 2-ish weeks ago. We covered this story a little bit, and I knew that I wanted to get someone on as a guest to talk more at length about it, because all I knew was from a Wisconsin Watch. Actually, this was Appleton Post-Crescent article saying that complaints surge at short-staffed Wisconsin senior living facilities. Residents go without medication and basic care, and really a fairly in-depth article about what's happening with our senior living centers and facilities and nursing homes across the state. And so we do have a guest who I'm very excited to talk to. Renee Eastman is with Leading Age Wisconsin. And I would love to just start with, what is Leading Age Wisconsin, Renee?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Kristin. I'm always happy to talk to people about the challenges facing our senior living industry. And that's basically what Leading Age Wisconsin does. So we're a membership association of nursing homes and assisted living facilities, mainly nonprofit and mission-driven organizations throughout the state that take care of our aging elders, kind of like the Tavern League for nursing homes, if you know.
That's a good way to put it. That is a good way to put it. How we as far as we all know the Tavern League. And so, and I think about this, and I think about my aging family members, and I think my parents are not there, but as with other family members, I read this and it is terrifying as far as what is happening. And it doesn't seem like there's a very good or very straightforward solution. And so before we kind of get into all of that, how would you summarize what's happening right now in Wisconsin when it comes to senior living facilities, nursing homes? And we can get into what the difference between those two are as well later.
Sure. Well, you're right that there are no straightforward solutions. If there was an easy fix, we would have come up with it already. So not to add to the depressing woes of society, but The folks who work in senior living and nursing homes right now are really downtrodden coming out of the pandemic. We've seen a lot of burnout, and people continue to leave that industry in a time in our state where the population is only aging. And I think people who work in the healthcare field or are really trying to be tuned in, are aware of the aging of the population of the state of Wisconsin, but the general population is maybe not. And I do worry very seriously about folks who aren't yet in the stage of life where they have to worry about an aging parent, but will be faced with that. And I think when that happens, that they'll become acutely aware of the challenges of finding a really high quality facility that they can trust with their loved one.
Because the way I read this article and even had read about things previously, so there's the part of quality care, and quality care is harder to find because of the staffing shortages. It's not that because these people are abusive or whatever. It's just that there is not enough people to necessarily take care of the amount of people who are in some of these facilities. And then facilities are also closing. So there's the ability that there's not even enough places to go to. And it's the fact that as of right now, Wisconsin, that your Medicare does not cover long-term care. And I don't know if everyone knows that.
Right. I think people, they have insurance in their working years. They're not familiar with even maybe the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, or what happens as they age. Signing up for Medicare can be a really challenging process for people, choosing a Medicare Advantage plan or what they want to do. People worry about saving for retirement, but one of the biggest question marks is retirement is whether you'll need long-term care services. And that's a really expensive endeavor that's hard to save for. And it's also really challenging for people to think about mentally. So I think they think, well, I hope that doesn't happen to me. I hope I don't get dementia. I hope, I die in my sleep one day and I am not burdening my family. So with them, not having that at the forefront of their minds and not saving for it, or not having the resources to save for it, it is a really challenging problem.
We're talking to Renee Eastman, who is the Vice President of Financial and Regulatory Services at Leading Age Wisconsin, which is a statewide association of nursing homes and other long-term care providers. And so as far as the solutions, because what is the number one issue that you think we could fix first? Is it staffing?
Staffing is the primary issue. Certainly lots of things are tied to staffing. So money helps with staffing. It's not a cure-all, but higher reimbursement and paying more fair wages to these individuals that are doing the hard work helps keep them from leaving and draw more of them into the field. Respect for the industry is another important one that, people are burning out, kind of becomes a vicious cycle of the fewer, the more emotionally taxed the people seeking care are, the easier it is for them to lash out at their caregivers, or there's a lot more challenging folks to care for with behavioral problems, people that are just harder to care for a lot of reasons, and that's harder work. So respect for the industry and really valuing the work that caregivers do is another way that we can help solve the staffing problem.
It's interesting because immediately my brain goes to the times we've talked about teachers and the times we've talked about childcare, and so much of the service work that just goes underappreciated and doesn't get the respect that it deserves, as far as the people who are literally taking care of other people and how much more they deserve than what they typically get from the general public. And so one of the things that you said as far as staffing is it comes back to being able to pay them more. And so what is kind of the landscape of Medicare versus Medicaid when it comes to long-term care in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so Medicare, your federal benefit, has really limited coverage for nursing home stays. They might cover a nursing home for really a few weeks to up to a couple of months after a surgery, or if you have a skilled rehabilitative need, if you had a knee replacement or something like that. But that coverage is less and less likely as healthcare advances have been made. People are more commonly going home to rehab from those type of events and not going to skilled nursing. And Medicare really doesn't cover any sort of long-term needs in an assisted living or very limited personal care or home health care needs. If people want to stay in their home and have someone come in to help with cleaning or meals or transportation, those aren't Medicare benefits. So in order to access those, folks pay for them privately with their own assets until they have spent down their resources enough to become eligible for the state assistance, which is Medicaid.
And then Medicaid. So basically, you have to
go through everything.
You have to spend everything, and then you'll be able to get Medicaid. And Medicaid does cover long-term care, but the reimbursement rates are still pretty low. And so, is it true that then there's cases where private living facilities can deny you?
Certainly, if you go, seek admission to an assisted living and you're already on Medicaid, you've already spent down all of your assets, you're much less likely to be admitted than someone who has years worth of resources to pay them their costs. Simply from a financial perspective, those places are businesses, and they can't, if they accept too many Medicaid residents, then they're shifting, and charging the folks who are spending their assets even higher amounts, which is not fair as well. So that's a problem. Also, the Medicaid program presupposes a certain amount of natural supports, and a lot of people are forced to rely on things like paid family caregivers, or even to get a reliable caregiver to show up to take care of you at home. You might have to find a neighbor who's willing to do it to accept the Medicaid rate, anyone else like that.
So we only have a couple minutes left, but as far as, is there any laws or policies being discussed that you think could alleviate this, especially knowing that what is it called? The silver tsunami that both the state and the country, is only going to be increasing?
Yeah, certainly at a federal level, immigration reform would help. There are many qualified nurses in the Philippines and other countries that want to come to the United States and they have that caregiving culture and want to be able to perform that type of work. So immigration reform would help. At the state level, Wisconsin Medicaid is renewing their family care waiver. Family care is the state program that covers assisted living. And the waiver is the state contract with the federal government about how they do so. So there's some public hearings, public input sessions coming up, and that'll be going through the legislature and the Joint Finance Committee in the next year.
Got it. And in the last minute that we have left, what do you hope that people, like you said, there's the general public that kind of maybe has blinders on from thinking this won't happen to me or I'll deal with it later. But what do you think is the most important thing for either someone who is retirement age or people who have parents who are getting older should know and be able to prepare themselves for, long-term facility care?
Yeah, I guess talk with your family members, have that open dialogue. And if you have the means to do so, look for opportunities in your community to volunteer at these types of places. Our seniors have a lot to teach us, and it's really a really growth experience to be able to do whatever you can, deliver Meals on Wheels or get to your county aging and disability resource center and see what you can do to help.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Renee Eastman is the Vice President of the Financial and Regulatory Services at Leading Age Wisconsin. Thank you so much for spending time with us today and educating us more on a really important issue that's affecting a lot of people in our state.
And it's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a great day. All right. We're going to take a short break. Coming up next, Wisconsin. I am Kristin Bry. She is Jane Matnair. And a quick plug, I guess, for me, sure. Tomorrow at 3, we're doing an event. I'm doing an event with Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, a discussion on local revenue reform. So I will be interviewing David Crowley, and we're also going to have Rob Henkin, who is the president of Wisconsin Policy Forum, which is funny because I've never interviewed Rob, but we've obviously interviewed a lot of people from Wisconsin Policy Forum. And
Yes.
so I get to finally meet Rob himself,
Nice.
who is the president. And so it's a live event that we're doing at the Milwaukee Athletic Club, but also we are live streaming it. And so I will put the link to the event tomorrow so anyone can watch. If you have questions that you would like for me to ask the county executive, feel free to email me at asgoeswisconsin@civicmedia.us. Don't text them just because I will probably forget as far as my prepping tonight for the questions I plan to ask tomorrow. But yeah, so it's going to be on the Facebook live stream. You can go to the Milwaukee County Executive's Facebook page and find it easily, but I will also link it to today's show notes. But I am looking forward to that because as much as I love doing the radio, I also really love doing live events. And so I was very flattered to be asked to do that. And then another plug, not for me at all, but there's been a couple different times that we have talked about Robert Reich, who was the labor secretary under Clinton, and how I was very lucky to have him
Yes.
as a professor when I was in college. And that exact class that he teaches at Berkeley, called Wealth and Poverty, is now uploaded entirely to YouTube for free.
Cool.
And I saw that in one of my roundups for today that he's put all of his lectures of that class on YouTube. And literally it's if you just on YouTube search Robert Reich, Wealth and Poverty.
Such a smart man.
It's 14 different lectures. And there's a part of me, I don't know if I have time to do it, but there's a part of me that would totally go back and rewatch
watch
these.
it. I bet.
So yeah.
That's very cool. 844-967-2789 if you ever want to call and or text. We were just talking to Renee Eastman from Leading Age Wisconsin about the challenges facing state nursing homes and long care facilities. Joe from Appleton is joining us. Good morning, Joe. What did you want to say?
Hi, ladies. Thanks for taking my call. Thank you for having Renee on. I love Leading Age Wisconsin. It's a great organization. So I'm an elder law attorney.
Oh.
And there are certain things that I think everybody should know on top of what Renee raised. Okay?
Okay.
If it's at least 66% of the folks are going to be needing some form of long-term care in the future, it is stupid expensive. It's just going to get more expensive. It's going to be $150,000 a year at a nursing home by the end of this decade. I tell all my clients, ideally, you have each individual, you have $250,000 sitting out there ready to spend on your long-term care needs. Now, if you have a big 401k, that's where it's going to come from. But ideally, for everybody, you get a good insurance product. Now, I don't sell long-term care insurance. There aren't too many people who do anymore. But if you can get a good insurance product that's going to cover you for at least $250,000, that's going to be best for you. It's going to be best for the facilities. It's going to be best for Medicaid in the long run, because right now, Medicaid is spending way too little because it doesn't have that much money, thanks to the way the state's set up. And everybody who's on Medicaid in a facility, it's paltry what they're getting in a reimbursement. So ideally, if you could pay privately with insurance, that's going to be best for everybody involved. Personally, I'm terrified of our long-term care system in this country and what it's going to be in the next 10 years. We're in for a heap of trouble if we all don't get our act together.
Joe, what about, so I'm 63. I'm concerned that at this age, no one is going to give me that kind of an insurance policy. Do people have to start signing up for this when they're in their 50s?
I usually say 50s or early 60s. 63 is still early 60s. Okay. So that's you. Talk to somebody. Find an agent. Just run through the options. There will be likely policy options for you. Just see what's out there. Insurance is not going to be for everybody. There are alternatives for it. That's when they start coming to me. But ideally, you get a good policy in place, and it could be worth the while for you and your family down the line.
That is really good advice. Thank you for so much
Thanks
for
a lot,
calling,
Joe.
Joe. That is because that is someone actually, Joe. Oh, I think is this Joe McClear? That was Joe McClear, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So he did say he would left on the Facebook live stream too that get long-term care insurance, and but to be and earlier the better
Right.
because I think probably the more pre-existing conditions you already have, it may implicate your ability to get long-term care insurance.
Exactly.
And as much as I think insurance is a racket sometimes,
It is a racket.
But in that situation, because I mean it's $5,000 to $10,000 a month for some of these places. And of course, when it comes, it's the same thing when you talk about your kid. It's the same thing when you talk about you a couple months ago when Cliffy was sick, right?
Yep.
When it comes to the people that you care about, you want them to get the best care, and you start to think, well, I don't care how expensive it is. Like, I want you to be taken care of, and you just don't think it's going to happen to you.
We would all love to die in our sleep at home. That'd be wonderful.
And we'd all love to be as healthy as my grandmother. Shout out Carol Bry, who's in her early 90s, still living at home and healthy and plays golf and is totally mentally sharp. And, I really hope I got her genes. I don't know if I did. and protect yourself and also advocate for what we can do actually policy-wise, because this is going to affect everybody and it's going to affect the state aggressively. So we're going to have some more fun in the next segment because I recently got called out for not being fun anymore.
Oh,
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News brief. The stifling high heat zone is moving across the country. Odyssey forecaster Craig Allen.
In the center of the nation, heat advisories start from eastern portions of Montana, from Pierce, South Dakota, down through Nebraska, and into Oklahoma and the northern portions of Texas.
Car crash on the campaign trail. CBS's Christopher Cruz says it involved Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
It happened this morning as DeSantis was traveling to an event in Chattanooga, Tennessee. His campaign tells CBS News DeSantis and his aides were not injured.
There's word LeBron James' 18-year-old son Bronny suffered cardiac arrest yesterday while practicing at USC. He's in stable condition. President Biden designating 3 sites to honor civil rights figure Emmett Till, killed in 1955. This man lives near Till's Chicago home.
It's history, it's a memory, and it's not a dream. We going to continue to fight for our rights. We're not going to go back.
CBS News Brief, I'm Steve Kathan.
You're listening to a radio station that's part of the Civic Media Network. Find more at civicmedia.us.
For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Humidity will join the smoke in creating adverse conditions for some. The air quality warning for our area runs through noon. That's for the smoke from Canada. Milwaukee's new sales tax has led to the suspension of plans for a new 25-story apartment building on the east side. The Madison-based developer cited the tax's impact on increased cost and the rising interest rates, making borrowing for the project more expensive. A local developer is experiencing rapid growth in its co-working office ventures within Waukesha County, preparing to launch 3 new locations soon. Among them, the former Boston Store Furniture Gallery building in Brookfield is undergoing a transformation into a co-working space with about 300 workstations, along with meeting rooms and event facilities. For news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
Attention taxpayers, ready for some bad news? With $80 billion in new funding from Congress, the IRS has launched their most aggressive hiring campaign ever to ramp up enforcement. If you're ignoring your taxes, don't delay another minute because your paycheck, your bank account, even your home or business could already be at risk. Now, here's the good news. Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax relief firm, can get to work immediately, helping to protect you from the IRS. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, their tax attorneys and licensed professionals are experts at resolving tax problems. Let them help determine if you qualify for the Fresh Start Initiative or other powerful IRS tax assistance programs. Take control. Call Optima Tax Relief now for a free consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Civic Media isn't just another broadcast company. We're your neighbors. We bleed green and gold, and we love nothing more than to help fellow Wisconsinites succeed. Whether your business wants to advertise to your local community or the entire state, Civic Media can help. Find out more at civicmedia.us. This summer, 540 AM WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with...
I promise I'm still fun. But this comment kind of broke my heart. Do I need to go try like all of the new Wisconsin State Fair food? Because I'll do it. So, story time. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristin Bry. She is Jane Madnair. And I will preface this with the goal of As Goes Wisconsin since the inception, which is
long before the radio show.
Long before the radio show. So this started in March to April 2020. And if you don't know the backstory, I originally came back. I was living in Los Angeles. I came back thinking I was going to try to make a documentary about the Wisconsin election and the different targeted demographics that were going to be the linchpin to winning Wisconsin. And then the pandemic hit and all the interviews I had set up weren't going to happen. I also didn't really know how to make a documentary, let's be honest. But what I did know how to do was make videos. And before I was on the radio, what I was really good at was social media videos. And the whole premise was, how do you use humor to spread information? It was edutainment, infotainment, whatever you want to call it. It was, the aspirational daily show last week tonight. Like how do you use humor to convey information and make things more simple? And so that first video was me showing my mom how to get an absentee ballot.
That's right.
And making fun of her because not always the best at technology, but I imagine that is a common,
it's accurate,
relatable thing when younger kids are trying to help their parents with technology. And I looked at the process of trying to upload your driver's license to myvote.wi.gov, and I was like, oh, a ton of people are going to get confused. And they did.
Yep.
Young people were sending selfies in. Not even older people, but they're like, not realizing they had to take a picture of their ID and figuring out how to upload that. And now it's more ubiquitous and stuff. But at the time, everyone was like, it was not that straightforward. And it was funny. And a lot of my videos that first year were the dynamic between my mom and I. And when I wasn't balancing the radio show, like I had more time to constantly find creative angles to talk about the news and then also do sports and state fair and stuff like that. Since starting the show, not only doing as many videos, but also finding the really fun angle and like the creative way to talk about it,
right,
while also doing the show, has been harder to do. Also being pregnant, which I'm just going to keep using as a scapegoat. But
use it while you got it, girl.
And so I had made a couple of videos in a row feeling like it was important to get the information out on my TikTok and my Instagram, which you should go follow at As Goes Wisconsin.
For sure, TikTok. You've done some great videos.
And there was one recently trying to summarize not only what had happened to Melissa Temple, the Waukesha teacher who was recently fired. But what we talked about on the show, things happening across the state as far as school boards, and are we, questioning, are we focused on the right things in school? If we're trying to fix learning loss and teacher shortage, is this going to help us and get us to where we want to be to keep talking about these culture war issues? And someone left a comment, Baby Shark left a comment that it takes a lot to get under my skin when it's an anonymous commenter on the internet. But he said, dude, I remember when your channel was fun.
Ouch.
And I read it and I was like, oh man. Because I do pride myself in trying to find that balance of what we do on this show, what I do with my videos, of finding the balance of information, every once in a while when it's required, getting really fired up, but also trying to bring humor and levity to things. And so when he said that was the follow-up video I made saying, do I need to go eat all the food at Wisconsin State Fair?
Go do something wacky.
Which I think I will do. And there was a ton of people in the comments who came to my defense who were very complimentary of what I do and how I do it. But I think it's an interesting question that any of the shows that at least I aspire to do, to be like Daily Show, Last Week Tonight, I mean, Samantha Bee's show's not on anymore, is that balance of finding the joke, finding the creative angle, finding the interesting take that doesn't just knee-jerk reaction into what could be anger or anger and outrage. And so I guess, what is that balance that I guess you look for? Maybe, and some people don't like it, right? Some people don't want the news to be funny.
Right.
And that's probably for people who are not listening now in Madison and are still listening to Tom Hartman. And the show, very different than Tom Hartman's show.
Yes, it certainly is.
And that's okay, because there's so much content out there that you can pick and choose what you want to, what feeds you and how you like to take in information.
But your whole tagline is moving Wisconsin forward one joke at a time.
Yeah.
It just explains it right there.
Yeah. But the important part of that is that we need to still have jokes.
Yes. Well, yes, which I think you do an excellent job of again balancing the fun with balancing the facts.
That is the hope. But I guess how do you, I guess that's the question. And it's kind of an esoteric question because not everyone's job is to balance like the what is the right balance between facts and fun. But I guess if you have thoughts on this, 844-967-2789, that's 844-96-party.
Is Baby Shark right? Has Kristin just not fun anymore? From the 541, Kristin, you have 2 brains at the moment, so you are twice as fun.
There we go.
And also, I think you've done a good job making things digestible, like a good salad. It has important facts spiced up with a fun seasoning.
Am I the goat cheese in the salad?
Oh, sure. You can be the goat cheese.
If
you want to be a goat, right?
That's if I ever see a salad, or mostly if I ever see anything on a menu that has goat cheese in it, that's what I'm going to order because I love that flavor.
I do too.
And I appreciate that. And this is not a call for me to try to get compliments to for you to compliment me. But it is interesting because I think, and I think about this as a content creator. Like I have good friends, one of which is Alex Worley, who, if you spend any time on social media, you've probably seen her stuff come up. She's very pretty. We've done a couple videos together, and her stuff is like very quintessential Wisconsin jokes. Like the one she did this week is like the 5 stages of going to a Brewer game, or, and it's really light. It's really fun. It's very Wisconsin. And it's interesting because there's been times where I've had this conversation with Mike as far as like the kind of stuff that I want to make. And I look at her stuff and I see how popular she is, and I see how many people engage with the content that she makes. I also see the commercials and brand deals that she gets. And ultimately, like, that's also just not me.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
like what drives me is doing the newsy part and the challenge of making that fun and sometimes funny. And that's where I want to live, even if it means less brand deals, less of an audience. And I'm okay with that. But it is the important part of, for me, continuing to remember that it's to find the funny.
Right. 844-967-2789. 844-96-party. Is Baby Shark right? Is Kristin no longer fun? And also, and we've asked this many times before too, if there is something that you think we should be addressing or covering.
Yeah. And we do get, I mean, we have someone coming on August 7th. I think we have someone who's coming on who was someone who emailed in, and it's about breast cancer. And it's a woman who's actually, I think it's a bill that's going to be proposed in the legislature. And so we certainly, as much as we can, get back to people who have suggestions or would like to come on the show. We can try to get back to you as quickly as we can and make it work. So always feel free to shoot us an email at asgoeswisconsin at civicmedia.us.
844-967-2789. Tom from Madison. Hey, Tom, how you doing this morning?
Hey, great. Yeah, I would say that humor is the one thing that our side has that the other side simply doesn't. Do you remember when Trump was first elected in 2016, Michael Moore he was there, I think, in New York at one of the election sites, and he said we should form armies of comedians because he can't take humor. He doesn't understand humor.
Yeah.
There are no iconic conservative comedians. They don't exist. And I think it's just the way that you can get a message across really, really well. I'm a big Thom Hartmann fan, but I'm listening to this show because it's Wisconsin. It's Wisconsin, and it is, Wisconsin is the petri dish of politics.
It absolutely is. I mean, that's why the show's called As Goes Wisconsin, because as goes Wisconsin, so goes the nation. But thank you, Tom. I'm happy that we, that you chose us over Thom Hartmann. That's a big compliment.
You bet. You take care. Have a great one.
You too. And that is true, and I don't know why that is. Well, I would say some people might say that Joe Rogan's both a comedian and conservative, but that's probably up for debate.
That's a big debate.
He does own a comedy store, a comedy club.
Well, okay, then if you have to buy your own venue so you can perform as a comic, that kind of takes away a little bit from your credibility.
I will say,
as a
I
comic.
did see before he had his podcast. I did see him perform comedy, and I did laugh.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay, but I think it has to do with irony and being able to recognize irony and some self-awareness.
Well, I think it's irony. I think it's also being able to, and this is what, the original Daily Show in the early stages, it wasn't a leftist show. It was poking fun of the media. It was poking fun of news. It was poking fun of cable news and how the surface levelness of it, if you think, what was it, what year was it when they did the rally for sanity?
Oh, with Stewart and Stephen Colbert.
And Stephen Colbert. And think about how much the world has changed since they did that.
Wow,
and it was in DC, and Jon Stewart's book that came out right around that time. And that was the George Bush, that was before Obama. So this was a long time ago. And it wasn't so much that they were advocating for Democrats or the left. It was pointing out hypocrisy. It was pointing out stupidity. It was pointing out it was doing what comedians are supposed to do best, which is punch up at the powers that be and challenge them in a way that makes you think differently. And it's what's so powerful, I think, about comedians and how they can do that. And I'm not even putting myself in the people who are really, really good at this. And I was going to save this for tomorrow because I'm still debating whether or not do we have time to play the Trey Crowder thing?
We can, sure. We got to go right now.
Okay.
Guys all fired up? about that Jason Aldean song, Try That in a Small Town. But I'm from a very, very, very small town, so I was interested in this story. One of the first lyrics of this song is like, hey, try carjacking an old lady at a red light, right? And I was like, a red light? What is this, Times Square? Legend has it they tried to install some red lights on the square in my hometown in the 80s, but that didn't take because, I kid you not, people kept shooting them out in the middle of the night. Now, I was like, Jason Aldean don't know what he's singing about, right? And he's from Macon, Georgia. Have y'all heard of Macon, Georgia? Yeah, that means it's not a small town. The fact that you've heard of it, right? I looked it up, they got a Target. It's about big Paris, dude. When I first saw the song, Try That in a Small Town, I thought it was going to be different. I thought it was going to be something like, you know, find a good piece of pizza. Try that in a small town. Be a gay teenager. Try that in a small town.
So we'll talk more about it after the break, but I feel like I found that last night because it's the most recent controversy. So we'll talk about that and comedy and the gold of it on the other side of the break, and we'll wrap up today's show. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
'Cause you're on your own in the real world, but don't go crying.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
This summer, 540 AM WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 540 AM WAUK.
AM radio provides always-on news, sports, talk, traffic, and weather reports. It also delivers vital emergency information when your community needs it most. A new bill in Congress would ensure AM radio stays in your car, because when cell and internet services are down, this free emergency service is critical. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress to support the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Mainly sunny skies and calm this afternoon, with daytime highs approaching 89. Winds out of the southwest, 8 to 15 miles an hour. Partly cloudy skies tonight. Lows dip down to about 69. Scattered thunderstorms likely tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 86. Cloudy skies with a few peaks of sun. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristin Bry, and just wrapping up our conversation around using comedy to talk about more serious issues. And we played a clip I found last night of Trey Crowder,
who I love,
who is great.
Yes, he's great.
And he is from a very small town. He's got a thick Southern accent, and he took on this whole Jason Aldean, try that in a small town controversy that's erupted over the last week that I haven't even broached, because I'm just like, this feels overblown altogether and just another thing that people are picking sides on. And you can tell me I'm wrong, but And because I just haven't, and I think it was that I hadn't figured out like what is the how do I actually feel about this? And it's funny coming from him when he made into, a stand-up routine quickly was not, is this racist? Is this not racist? But talking about like, is this talking about a small town? Like, are we talking about the same kind of town? And also challenging if he's even from a small town and talking from experience. And I love what he ends with is like, when I heard try it in a small town, it's like all the challenge of like the things you really can't do in a small town, like try being gay in a small town.
Right.
And and I think that is what I find so interesting and powerful about like a comedian's angle on news and facts and the zeitgeist is thinking about it critically and kind of poking holes in the things that like don't quite add up instead of just the immediate reactionary, I disagree or I wholeheartedly agree. We have to pick sides. And it's like, I think there's a little bit more gray here to like pick apart and make fun of.
And I think that's one of the things that makes you unique and your approach so unique is because you are very thoughtful about these things.
I try to be.
You are. You again, the amount of information that you consume and the thought that goes into the topics that you select and the angles that you get out of it because you take your time with it and you don't do those reactionary things. And I think that's very unique.
Well, thanks.
I do.
Should we talk about the Jason Aldean thing tomorrow?
Sure.
Do you have thoughts on the Jason Aldean thing?
Sure. I do.
All right. Well, that is a good preview. I'm sure Greg Bach has thoughts on the Jason Aldean thing.
I have no doubt about that. And remember, you can always call and or text and use your app to text us directly as well at 844-967-2789. Do we want to talk about this text in the couple of minutes that we have left?
I was either going to talk about that or I was going to end in a fun story from a Wisconsin man won a contest recently.
Oh, I know what it is.
All right. On his 68th birthday, a white-bearded Wisconsin man won the Hemingway Lookalike Contest, the highlight of Key West's annual Hemingway Days celebration that ended on Sunday. Garrett Marshall, if you're listening, he's a Madison resident.
Hey.
He's a retired television broadcast engineer, lives in Madison. And he prevailed this over the weekend at Sloppy Joe's Bar, a frequent hangout of Ernest Hemingway when he lived in Key West in the 1930s.
Wow.
He said, Marshall said, "This is the best birthday I've ever had." So congratulations. And literally there's a picture with him and past winners. And they literally look like clones of each other. They all look with white beards, look like Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, that is so
an
funny.
old Ernest Hemingway.
Right. That's really funny. Well done, Marshall. We all want to hit those life goals, you know?
No one can ever take that away from you.
No. It's yours.
All right, now we can
it's yours to do with as you will. From the 414, oh, Jane, young Jane, it's sad but true that presently there isn't much humor in the facts. Jane, you and Matt Flynn are the only two close to my age. Matt is older, but you claim to be 63. I don't know why I would claim to be 60. I was born March 18th, 1960. I'm going to bet I've got you by a few months. I love the show. Bad news for you, 414. I was born in January of 1960. And if I was going to be claimed to be something, it would sure be
younger.
Maybe I should say, no, I'm actually 70. And then people will say, God, you look so good for 70.
All right. Well, then coming up tomorrow, maybe we will kick off the show with the Jason Aldean controversy. I'll have to pick apart my thoughts on, that culture war thing. There's a lot of takes to be had on it, but there's also just what the hell is going on with country music in general? Because there was stuff at Country Thunder with a TMJ reporter that apparently,
she was just covering the event.
She was covering the event and got called the N-word. They're also at that same event. Apparently, someone was flying the Confederate flag, and it's interesting. And I want to do some more research because people who are like old school country fans, of like old country was like anarchists, right? It was people who were against
outlaws.
Not even outlaws. It was people who were against capitalism. It was against fascism. It was against the man. It was like it was revolutionary type lyrics and music. And now it's like, what is country music now, and who, like, what does it stand for? And I think that there's a lot to unpack there as far as like, did he just make this song for money? Like, does he actually even believe the things that he says? Because definitely Toby Keith was like all about that patriotic music post 9/11, and like pretty sure he's a Democrat, you know? So we'll kick off the show tomorrow with that. But also we are going to have some EAA features tomorrow, because I drove past those lands or those grounds over the weekend, and it is packed in Oshkosh right now. So I know Civic Media is gonna have some live coverage from the event all weekend long. So we'll talk about that.
And Dick Napinski from the EAA will be joining us.
Perfect. And then obviously it's Wednesday, so Greg Bach will be here. So we have a great show planned for tomorrow. But as for today, thank you to Renee Eastman for being here. Thank you to Dan Shafer for being here. Thank you for texting, calling, all of it. And, you guys help make the show. It's not just us.
No, that's for sure.
So,
and I am 70, but
you're not 70. Don't lie to the people, Jane.
So good.
All right. Come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. This has been As Goes